Hi turnips! So today we'll be learning how to make my all-time favorite macaron, the Thai tea macaron. And I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but I'm really obsessed and I really like Thai tea, like Thai iced tea and all kinds of things like that. So without further ado, let's get started on this delicious flavor and recipe. Now, just a quick shout out to Emmett and Daphne for ordering the Thai tea macarons. And I'm making these macarons in bulk, so that's why I had my almond meal in the lower right hand corner that already measured out. And now I'm just sifting my confectioner sugar. This step should be relatively easy since it's powdered sugar and they should be already in powder form. So it's not too hard to separate them and strain it through the fine sifter. For sifting the confection sugar, I decided to use a spoon and just push it down, but that's not really the correct way to sift per se, and it won't be technical. You should tap on the sides as shown. Okay, so the very next step, we are going to place our Thai tea mix into a grinder and then we go grind it into powder. And then once we grind it into powder, we go add in with our confection sugar and almond meal and grind them all together again. And by doing this extra step, it will make your mixture really fine, and that really definitely helps with the structure of the dome of your macaron, so that it's very smooth instead of having that kicky bump that you see in some of the macarons. For those who are wondering why we're adding all the ingredients and grind them together instead of grinding them individually, that is because when you grind almond meal, it releases oil from the nut. And that is a huge problem because it will clump the ingredients together. And one way to get around it is by adding confection sugar, since it's relatively dry. So when you grind your almond meal, it gets incorporated together and then it just remains as very powder form instead of very oily and wet. And now moving on to the next step, we are going to combine all our ingredients together. One of the things I like to do is to just sift them one more time, so to ensure that there are no clumping. I know it gets very tedious and sometimes I'm also very impatient, but I think it's a really good step and it's also a really good technique. So once we have all of that done, we are going to mix in all our ingredients with our spoon, and then it should look like that. And moving on to the next step, we are going to measure out our egg whites and whisk them. I think for egg whites, one important thing to do is to make sure that none of the egg yolk gets incorporated into your egg whites, because that will ruin your whole entire egg white batter and you have to start all over again with a clean bowl. So one thing I think it's really easy is to first tap your egg onto a counter and then just crack it open. It's so much easier. I definitely recommend you guys using a gram scale for this, because depending on the egg and the manufacturers and on the size of the egg whites might vary. So usually the eggs that I get from Walmart, they're usually approximately 30 grams each, assuming that you get most of the egg whites out. I've also experimented with extra large brown eggs and their egg whites are definitely much more, and it also varies, so I think you guys should definitely invest in the gram scale. And if you guys are off by a couple grams, it shouldn't matter too much because that should not break or make your macaron. But it's also definitely important to be around the same ballpark. And then now we are going to mix our eggs until it becomes very foamy like cotton. It should have like the texture of clouds up in the sky. I also remember that when I first started baking macarons, the egg whites looked kind of yellowy. I was like thinking, how does it ever turn white? Trust me, it will. And even if you whisk it by hand, it will. So now that you have reached this foamy consistency right here, it's a good time to start adding your granulated sugar. Since I have already measured out my granulated sugar, I'm going to add it in at this point. And if you guys are baking different kinds of macarons or macarons in bulk, I strongly recommend you guys using cups, so that when you guys are done with your baking sessions, you guys could also throw out the cups. And I think it's so much easier and more convenient, especially measuring out your ingredients ahead of time. It makes the whole entire baking process so much more enjoyable and smoother as well. One of the things I like to do is to whisk my egg whites by hand, but since I'm pressed for time, I'm also making a couple batches, I decided to use a stand mixer and just whisk. So for those who have been watching my videos, you guys do not need a mixer. You guys could definitely whisk it by hand and it will work just as fine. But it will also be a huge workout for your arms. And at this point, you could definitely see a change in texture. It has been really thick, and that's all thanks to sugar. And at this point, you should have been like starting to form soft peaks. and before you know it, you just keep on whisking until you have reached hard peaks. So what are hard peaks? Hard peaks is when you see a peak at the right end and it's not flopped, like that. And now that you have reached hard peaks, you can also start adding food coloring if you would like. Since I'm making Thai tea macarons, I really want a orange color, so I added a red food coloring and some drops of yellow food coloring to make that orange color. Something to keep in mind for food coloring is that these food coloring are relatively light, so it's not going to be a huge difference. So if you want black macaron, unless you add a lot of food coloring, it's not going to turn out exactly black. It will probably turn out like gray. Another thing to keep in mind is to not add too much food coloring because it will affect the acidity of your egg whites. And once you have added your food coloring, you can start whisking, and you should still be able to maintain that hard peak at the very end. And it's also a good way for you to start incorporating the edge of the egg white so that all of them are evenly distributed. Another perk about using food coloring is that when you mix it and whisk it together, you can see the color difference, so that you will always see a different color at the rim of the mixing bowl, and that is a good indicator that you can also whisk over at the edge so that all of them are well incorporated together. And as you can see, there is still a very sharp peak at the end of the whisk. At this point, we are going to slide in our dry ingredients and fold them together. If you guys are not familiar with folding, you guys can also check out my other videos on my channels to see proper folding techniques. I know that in my previous macaron videos, I've been referring to you guys to different videos where you guys want to learn a special technique or a certain kind of technique. So for this video, you guys do not need to go anywhere because I'm going to show you the whole entire process of me folding it. And after dumping in all those dry ingredients, I decided to fold the rims of the bowls first. I think it's important to get as much egg whites and as much dry ingredients incorporated together in the first step so that subsequent steps are easier. And just keep on swirling around. You do not cut in directly into the middle of your batter because that would destroy all the air bubbles that you have created while you were whisking. And just keep on folding. It seems like it's hopeless at first, but eventually you get there. And you just keep on folding and just fold the right outer edge. I think that's where usually you do most of the mixing. And as you fold, you can also see that the dry ingredients are combining very well with the egg whites. And it should be relatively thick at this point. And if you guys look closely, you can see the tiny bits of dry ingredients. That means that your batter is now well incorporated. Just keep on folding until it looks relatively even. Even though it takes me much more time to edit and also film the whole entire process of folding it, I think it's really beneficial and really helpful to a lot of you guys. So if you guys don't feel like this is really beneficial and you guys already know how to fold your macaron batter, you guys can move on and skip this step. I know that there are blog recipes that indicate the amount of fold they use, but I don't think that's really an accurate measurement because depending on the amount of motion and how far you fold, it could really vary. So I think by seeing a visual can really help you distinguish what is a batter that's ready and a batter that needs more folding. And I'm not sure if you guys know, but the Thai tea mix has orange food coloring in it already, so it also makes the batter a little bit more orange. And I'm just trying to test the texture right there, and I noticed that it's still very clumpy and it's not moving as much. And you know you reach a perfect consistency when you reach a lava texture. And the fact that it does not droop back, that means that it's not ready and it needs more folding. And you guys can also possibly overfold your macaron batter, and that is when you have too little air bubbles and you've been folding for a very long time. And that is really bad. And this step always reminds me of bubblegum. I don't know why. It's very thick, viscous, and I think it's just really nice and mesmerizing as well. And as you guys can see, it's starting to flow really nicely and smoothly, and then it goes back down. And that is the perfect consistency that you guys are looking for. And if your batter starts running down too fast, that means that it's overmixed. And at this point, you're ready to pipe your batter onto a pastry bag and pipe it onto your parchment paper or silk pad. Now you guys can use a large container and just put your piping bag in it so you guys can pour all your batter into the piping bag. And for this step, I decided to use my Starbucks tumbler because I do like Starbucks and I think it's high enough for the one I'm using. And I usually like to use disposable clear piping bags because it also makes it easier for you guys to visualize. And I also do not like to wash my dishes, so by having a disposable one, it definitely makes my life easier as well. And now that you have inserted your piping tip and the piping rings, you guys are ready to add in your batter into the pastry bag. And now moving on to the next step, we are going to pipe our batter onto a parchment paper or soap pad. And I've already designed the printing at the right end. I printed it out with computer paper and I just put it over my soap pad. And it's a good way for me to keep track of the shapes. And I'm just piping in freestyle, so I'm not really exactly following the shapes, but you guys want to, you guys can. And piping is definitely one of my favorite parts as well, because you just pipe directly and you just need to pipe on top. You do not pipe at an angle. It's really easy. So just like create a smaller pressure and just press onto your piping bag, and your piping bag will ooze out that beautiful macaron batter. And I certainly think that piping is one of those things that with more practice you can definitely master the skills of piping. Also, by piping diagonally, it also increases your space, so that maybe if you have a little space for a small macaron, you guys could also pipe in between the rows. And I also apologize for the poor camera quality. My camera decided to die while I was filming this, so I decided to use my iPhone 6 Plus, and I filmed this with my phone. And I'm not sure you guys noticed, but you guys did a really good job with sifting, and you guys also did a really good job with folding in such a way that it's the perfect consistency. When you pipe your batter onto your soap pad, it also moves out very quickly, but not too quick, so that it retains this circular shape. And even when you pull your macaron batter tip from the very top, the tip of the macaron also evens out at the very bottom. And then we are going to tap our tray to release all the excess air bubbles, and it's definitely important to remember to do this. And then we're going to bake our macarons at a preheated 300 degrees oven for approximately 20 minutes. And for the frosting, I use white chocolate or cream cheese frosting, and it's an original recipe. I could definitely show you guys another time in another video, since I'm almost out of time for this video. And this is how my customized macaron box for Daphne and Edmund. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the easy tutorial on how to make the Thai tea macarons. And if you guys want to learn how to make the Thai tea, I've also posted the link right there. And join me for other sweet weekly adventures by subscribing to my channel. And please give me thumbs up, like, and share. Until next time, bye!